my friends, welcome to Pro Strings. I'm Henriette and I'm delighted to teach you today. Today is day 22 of the Learn to Play Suzuki Violin in 30 Days course. You have come incredibly far and I commend you for sticking with it. We have gone at a steady pace and I want to use today just to take stock and to review some of our techniques. So when you play the violin, technique is incredibly important. It is important not just to be able to play your pieces today, but also to be able to develop your playing in the long term. If you get your techniques right from an early stage in your playing, you are far more likely to develop more quickly later on too. So in this course, we don't just think about the here and now, we also look after your long-term future on your violin. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to play minuet number 2 that we learned in day 21 with a more thorough understanding of the technique and therefore hopefully also with a better tone and also better in tune. If you would like to achieve that long-term goal, and if you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button now and also hit the bell button so you will be updated every time a new video is released. Now that's enough talking for now, let's get you tuned up first. So here are your tuning notes. So today we are going to go over all your postures, your violin hold, your bow hold and all the other techniques that you've learned previously in this course. So let's begin with your stance. Of course there are photos in the front of the book, but I would like you to think about your left foot and I want you to place your left foot forward a little bit more and be really flexible in your knees. So that is always moving, and I'm not saying you need to always move forwards and backwards when you play, but you want to have that flexible stance to start with. If you find it easier, you might want to play in your socks for a bit so that you just start to learn to feel the floor through the soles of your feet. And that is a very good basic stance for finding your grounding when you play the violin. I'm just going to show this to you without my bow. So when your left foot is forward a little bit, it supports the violin that's also on the left side of your body. Now what I'd like you to do is to slide your violin over your collarbone so that it's right to the side. And you want to make sure that this corner of your jaw is over the chin rest here. That thing is called the chin rest. It's not really the right word for it because it's not your chin that's on the chin rest, it's your jaw that's on the chin rest, but never mind, that's just the way it's called. Okay, so your violin is also on the left side of your body and it's being supported by your left foot, and that's quite good to get that feel that your left foot is there to support your violin on the left side of your body. Now, next, what I'd like you to try is to actually stay here in that little corner with your thumb. That corner is especially made for your thumb to feel really snug there. And what I'd like you to do next is to let your thumb circle around the neck of the violin so that your fingers go up and over, and they're going so far over that with your pinky you can pluck the G string like that. So you can see that my elbow is actually sticking out to the right of my violin, so it's that far under so that it brings my fingers to the left. So let's do that again, shall we? We're practicing 4 times plucking on each of the strings. 1. So that's my pinky on G. Now with my ring finger I'm going to pluck the D string. So we'll do that a couple of times. Lovely. And what this does, first of all, it encourages your elbow to come further under the violin. It also makes your fingers stronger and you learn to direct it to the right string where you need it. Okay, so now let's have your middle finger for the A string. That's it. Keep going for a bit more to get your fingers a little bit of extra strength. That's it. Be careful that you don't pluck it super hard because then you can start tuning all over again at the end of this. But just practice a few more times. Good. And now we've got our index finger left for the E string. That's it. Very nice. So now bring your arm back and let's just swing that arm underneath the violin. Okay. So that will release your shoulder here. So if that is a bit stiff after having gone so far under, just give it a good roll around. Just make sure it's nice and relaxed. So we're picking it up here again. So your elbow always needs to be flexible underneath the violin. There's nothing to stop you from playing more than having that elbow firmly in place. There should be always a movement there. Now, later on you'll find places in your music where you might just relax your shoulder and your elbow like that. But for now, we're doing it this way and it's quite nice. Now, bring up your finger line so that it's level with the E string. We've done that in our first couple of lessons. So that finger line where your finger is attached to your hand should be level with the E string. So since today we are perfecting all our techniques, let's just review that and see if your finger line is really next to the E string still. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do next is to think about your thumb. And your thumb, officially, it should be in between your index and second fingers there. And it should just be peeking over the edge, so there is fine. Some people find it nicer to hold it nearer your index finger or a little bit further up towards your second finger. That doesn't matter so long as your thumb doesn't go this side of your index finger, and you can probably see why, because if I move my thumb back, what happens to my wrist is that it bends backwards. It also takes my fingers away from the strings rather than bringing it closer to the strings. Now you should also not have your thumb further up there, because then it will start to pull your fingers away from the place where you need them. So your thumb is just peeking over the edge, your finger line is level with the E string, so that means that all of these knuckles here are level with the E string as well, above the fingerboard I would say. And there we go. So you've got all your fingers nice and round there. Now I want you to think also to push your wrist out a little bit so that this becomes more of a straight line here. So if you find yourself playing like this, you're much more likely to have your fingers flatter on the string. So having your wrist pushed out encourages your fingers to be much more round on the string. And that's what we're aiming for. Not to collapse in your joints here like that, but keeping your fingers on their fingertips. And as I've said before, if you find that difficult to play on your fingertips, it may be that your nails need cutting a little bit more, because violinists always have very short nails on their left hand to allow the fingertips to be upright. Okay, so if you feel your nails, then file them or cut them a little bit shorter. Okay, now that's a lot of thinking about your left hand, and that will gradually become stronger so that you will be able to hold it for longer periods of time. So don't worry if you find that extremely tiring today. If you give it a little bit of attention every day, you will soon find it becomes easier. But today we're having a special lesson just about practicing all these postures, just to focus on it a little bit extra today. So let's put the violin away and let's pick up the bow. So first of all, I'd just like to think about how tight the bow should be. And I always say to my pupils, aim for a finger width space between the hair and the stick at the narrowest point, so that you keep that nice shape of the bow there. if it starts to bend the other way, you're definitely not in the right direction. So you can see if you loosen it a little bit more. If I loosen my bow a little bit more, it gets too close to the stick. And if I start to tighten it, here you can see that the bow is changing shape. I won't do that too much now. This is way too tight, so you can see I've got nearly 2 finger widths space, and you can see that the arch of the bow is going to be changing. So I'm going to quickly release that because that is not good. The stick of the bow is made to bounce and to be flexible, and you can sometimes feel that that bow is really, really flexible, and you can bend it in separately different ways. Be very careful when you do that though. So we need that flexibility in the bow, and you get it by just having it at the precise tightness of the hair. There we go. Now, our very first lesson, we started off with that ring between our middle finger and thumb, and I just want you to focus on that again today, okay, because we're making every posture and every hold a lot more perfect. So let's go back to basics here. Open up a little gap, and that's where you put your stick in. Now your thumb comes right here. You can see this padded bit, this black thing here, and this, the heel of the bow there, and there's a little bit of wood just there where my thumb goes. Okay, I know that this corner is crying out to put your thumb in. It's not the right corner though, so just go there. Okay, pop your middle finger over, then place your index finger a finger space away, but your ring finger comes close to the middle finger, so you've got a space here, and you're also going to have a space there. Now most bows have got edges here at the end. If your bow is round, then you need to make sure that your little finger sits on the bow from the side, so it's not on the top like that, but it leans against it, as it were, from the side. If you have edges here on your bow, that's even easier, and you can put your pinky on the side edge there. All right, now let's revise our bow exercises, and let's do some gentle waving, because we're always working towards flexibility in our right wrist. So feel your wrist move. This is not an everyday movement really, and neither is that, although this one you use a bit more in everyday life, I imagine, when you pour a cup of tea or something. Okay, all right, let's have the bow upright now, and let's see how flexible your fingers really are. And can you shuffle all the way up to the point of the bow, like that? And now, can you get like a little caterpillar walk up on the bow, back towards the heel. Be careful you don't get stuck with your thumb in between the hair and the stick. And then when you get back to the heel of the bow, see if you can find that nice bow hold again with your middle 2 fingers closer together, a space here and a space there. Okay, now today we're going to have an extra challenge, because I would like you to try and do this. Can you tap your index finger on the bow like that? Well done. Now can you tap your middle finger? Super. Can you tap your ring finger? That's a whole lot more difficult for most people. Okay, and now can you tap your pinky? Yes, we can. Very good. And that promotes independence of your fingering, because why have we got the bow hold that we have? Because we can steer the bow. Look, I can steer it from left to right if you look here. I can also steer it up and down. That's it, that's my pinky that does that. And thirdly, I can roll the bow between my fingers like that. And that allows me to play more on the side or more on all of the hair there. Now that is something to be considering later on in your progress, but for now you want to make sure that you manipulate the bow in such a way that you play all the hair flat on the string. And then you've got a very good basic pattern there. Super, so let's pick up the violin again, and we're just going to do some straight bowing. So, let's place the violin in the correct position on your shoulder again. And we're going to go on the G string, and I'm going to go here at the heel of the bow. And what I'd like you to think about now is to drop your shoulder and to drop your right elbow. We know that for the G string, our elbow is a little bit higher, but for now, just for practice, I would like you to hang off that string. And you can perhaps see that my fingers are really loose on the bow. I'm hardly touching I'm touching it, I'm having the bow hold there, but I'm not doing anything. So my bow is just leaning into the string. I could take all my fingers away there. Okay, so let's see if you can find that balance by dropping your shoulder and dropping your right elbow. And this is quite a good way to start your bow stroke, because I know now that you are going to be playing with all the weight of the bow into the string. And we get volume in violin playing, not by pressing the bow into the string, but by hanging the bow off the string, as it were. So you let the weight of the bow and the weight of your arm do the work. Now that's a different way of thinking at it. So I'm not pushing the bow into the string. No, I'm pulling it, if anything. I'm hanging off it. So the weight of my arm creates the volume of my sound. Now, if you go very slowly, which we'll do, we'll make the most horrendous noise, but for practicing, that's actually quite nice to practice. So I'm just going to pull now, and you can perhaps see I'm pulling quite hard, and it's hardly moving. It's so heavy, hanging into the string, and that's quite a good exercise to do. Eventually, if you go fast enough, you get a better sound, you see. But it's quite a good exercise to make sure that your right shoulder is down, your elbow is also hanging off it, and it's the sheer weight of the bow in the string that creates that. Okay. Now let's go back to the heel of the bow and see if we can find that same weighted bow there. And you'll probably have noticed that I was just bending my fingers. Look, I was going from here, but my fingers are much straighter. And now the bow allows my fingers to bend. My fingers aren't doing anything, that's just how they end up being. Okay, so let's hang off all your weight into the string. Don't worry about the sound. And again, see if you can find that weight when you come back. Find that weight again. Now all that time I'm hoping you've been pushing your bow forwards, and I can show you I'm going forwards with my arm so my bow stays nice and parallel to the bridge. If I didn't do that, I'll show you the wrong way. If I let my arm come sideways, you can hear the bow slipping, you see, because my arm is way too far to the side of my body. It's ending up about here, whereas I should have gone that way. So for some people that's really hard to do. So if that's you, don't despair please, because that will be all right. But it's just different from how you think about it. So this course is one of those things where you think, oh, violin bowing isn't to the right hand side, but it's actually forward. And some other people might say, oh yes, I've always done it like that, and that's great. Later on, I'm sure there'll be something that you find challenging. So not to worry if you find that really, really difficult to bow straight. So let's do that one more thing, okay? One more time. Hang off it. Let all the weight of your arm drop into the string there. Okay. And back. Now, let's think about flexibility in your fingers a little bit, and perhaps you might be able to do that. Do it without your bow first to get the feel, and now let's see if we can do it with the bow as well. Could you do that? I can remember I found this incredibly difficult when my teacher first taught me that. I'm thinking I can't pull those fingers towards me at all. That'll come, but I just want to make you aware that is a possibility that it might move like that. Okay, we're doing it one more time, so we're going to go on the G string, hanging off the string. Make sure that all your fingers and your pinky especially are fully bent on the bow there. And as we play a long bow, go straight. Push it straight. Perfect. And then you go back. hanging off it again. I'm practicing that heavy weight into the string on the G string because it's much more difficult to feel on the E string because of the angle that your bow is at, you see. So when you practice this in between lessons, do practice it on the G string all the time because it's just much easier to feel it. Okay, but let's now practice our seesaw exercise that we did in the beginning of this course, just to make you aware of where your elbow should be in everyday playing. And that is, of course, much higher than where I had it before. Now, you want to consider that this end of the stick is parallel more or less with your upper arm. And let's have a go now to the E string, and you can see both parallels going up and down together. Okay, so if you find yourself playing like this, there is no parallel at all. So I'm looking at the angle here of your bow and the level of your upper arm. And you can see that the two go in sync. Okay, and let's move up again now. And all that time my bow is in the middle of the string. Okay, so this exercise is a bit different from the exercise that we did before, where we were right at the heel and hanging off. We're practicing the weight then. And now we're practicing a different exercise and we're practicing the angles. Okay, eventually those will integrate, and I will talk you through those if those things appear in your music. But for now we're just practicing the techniques because we're perfecting our technique today. So next, let's practice playing with that weight into the string on a long G scale. So we're going to start on the G string here. Okay, now we're going to play properly with our parallels in the right way, but we're seeing if we can develop a little bit of movement, bending and stretching your fingers. So we're playing every note twice with long bows. Here we go. And bend your fingers, straighten your fingers, and bend. Let me just talk you through one more thing. So we practiced at the beginning that flexible stance in your knees. So I would like you now to go back thinking about your feet and your knees and just checking that your left foot is slightly forward and that you're always flexible and bendy in your knees. Okay, let's go down the scale now and well done. Next we're playing the G Arpeggio, and we have of course been thinking about a lot of things already. So what my aim is to let you start to think about one aspect of your playing when you play up the arpeggio, like we came down on the scale, thinking about the flexibility in our legs. Now next, when we play the arpeggio, let's make it our goal to push your wrist out and to make sure that this line is nice and straight. So here we go on the arpeggio, and repeat the arpeggio one more time, shall we? And this time, because we're going across the strings all the time, let's check over our elbow levels for our bow arm. Here we go, and drop your elbow, and drop your elbow down a little bit lower, and drop your elbow even further. Come up with your elbow, and up again, well done. And that's just an example of how you can switch your focus when you practice one thing and then another thing with a different focus. And that's just good practice if you have something in your head, a job to do as it were. Because any practice that you do with some focus is so much more valuable than practice where you think about your shopping list, for instance, or what you're going to do this evening. So whenever you practice, see if you can focus your thinking about one aspect of your playing. Because there are so many different things. Nobody, not a single person I know, can practice everything at the same time. So we pick out bits every time. Next, take a look at page 40. And I would like to have a go at the last two lines of music on page 40, because we've never done that before. So these are the two lines that I'm after. Okay, we're going to prepare those now. And when we look at the notes, we've got a B. Next up is a C sharp, which is a wide space between fingers 1 and 2. And then we get a D sharp, which is also another space away from your second finger. Your finger pattern here is going to be B, C sharp, D sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp with a gap, 2, 1, and then you go straight to that D sharp again. This note here is still a D sharp. I'm now in the just beyond the middle of the first bar. Because that D sharp lasts until the bar line, you see, so that D here is also a D sharp. 2, 1. Let me play you the first bar there. Let's play that bar again, shall we? Okay, let's have a look at the second bar now. Now, since my third finger is raised here, my fourth finger comes right by the side. Remember, originally we played this finger pattern, but now what's happened is that this finger has gone up. So that's our finger pattern in the second bar. Let's do the second bar from the beginning again. I'm going to place my fingers down at the start. And the fourth bar. If you practice it a couple of times, you'll get better at it, because it's very confusing at first because your fingers are now in a different finger pattern. I'm going to now have a look at the last line of page 40. So now we're on the E string and we've got the same pattern as on the line before where we were on the A string. So now we're on E, same pattern from the beginning, and see that all my fingers are now on the string still. Underneath the bars you can see the numbers 1 and a long horizontal line, and in the next bar it's 1 and 2 and a long horizontal line. Those lines, they indicate to leave your fingers down. So I'm starting from the second bar of the last line of page 40. Wow, that's a mouthful. And straight to 2. Well done. Every good lesson should have bits in it that you are familiar with, like we played the G scale and the G Arpeggio, but also bits that are stretching you a little bit. So, and that was certainly this last bit that we've done, the last 2 lines of page 40. So if you find that very challenging, not to worry, because it is very challenging, but we're just pushing you a little bit ahead. If we did the same old things all the time, it would get very boring very quickly. So if you find that stretching you, good, that's what the aim was, and later on you'll think back and you think, what was so difficult about it? But for now that is really very challenging. So thank you for sticking with me on that. Now let's go back now to minuet number 2. You know minuet number 2 already, but since we've practiced the raised third fingers, let's play it again and let's see how we get on with that now. We're not going to have a lesson on minuet number 2 because that is the previous day that we did, but let's just play it through for fun, shall we? Pick one of the technical aspects that you found a bit challenging earlier on this lesson, for instance your bow hold, or your finger line, or maybe your thumb, or your elbow levels. Pick one thing that you find important and that you're going to tidy up right now. So, and then we think about that aspect only when you play the minuet with me. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, no repeat, and well done. You have consolidated all your techniques today and I'm super pleased with your progress. Do please let me know any questions that you may have by writing about your progress in the text box below. As many of you have already written about your progress before, you know that I will respond. All good wishes with your playing, and I look forward to seeing you in day 23 where we will be learning minuet number 3. Goodbye.